Can Yujiro's perfected martial arts and narrative glaze beat Garou's limitless adaptation and evolution? Ask any two random power scalers, and you'll get two opposite answers. One says Garou annihilates, the other says Yujiro annihilates. What I will add is that this is the ultimate martial arts debate, and it's closer than it looks. So, how are we going to figure this out? First, we put both characters into perspective. Then we answer 10 key questions about this matchup. And then finally, we have Yujiro run the full Garou Gauntlet and see if he stops human Garou, half monster Garou, or maybe even cosmic Garou if the baki narrator joins in on the fight on Yujiro's side, like how the monster god lent his powers to Garou. Now let's freshen our minds a little bit before the actual power scaling. Starting with Garou, the thing to remember is that he's a martial arts prodigy with a natural sense for combat, who could copy the fighting styles of his opponents and immediately transform them into his own. He primarily uses the Fist of Flowing Water, otherwise known as Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist, which is the ultimate art of redirecting force. Basically, it takes knowledge of the flow of energy behind raging currents and tidal surges to recreate these forces within one's body and channel them through the fists. And he is constantly adapting. I mean, there's never any cap on how much his martial arts can improve in a single fight. There are many examples of this, but the one I want to start with is how, despite being destroyed by Watchdog Man and getting one-shotted the second time by Saitama, Garou still manages to take on all 8 of Death Gatling's team after just one look at their fighting styles and secret techniques in the Hero Guide. He quite literally goes from being incapable of fighting back against them to destroying all of them, and then immediately after fights Genos and then also Bang. Yes, he loses to Bang, but Garou's tenacity and the part about forcing himself to adapt is clearly defined by the narrative. Also, keep in mind that even before this whole generational run against Death Gatling Gang, as in before any of the monsterization, we see him absolutely destroying S-Class hero Tank Top Master, who, as we later see during the Monster Association arc, could throw buildings at supersonic speed. Now, nobody would disagree that Tank Top Master would be in the absolute top tier of power and baki. I mean, anyone who can throw buildings at you would be a threat even to Yujiro. However, this is where things get interesting, because just like how Garou's more than raw power or speed, the same goes for Yujiro. We know for a fact that he is stated to be constantly improving at an alarming rate, both in terms of strength and in terms of martial arts. Plus, we also know that he can detect the physical conditions and weaknesses of a person with 100% accuracy just by glancing at them. And he can mimic any martial arts technique after seeing it once. And with Zhao Li, he can make his body completely limp and flow like a blade of grass in a storm to reduce damage. His sixth sense is so insane that he could sense Baki's fighting spirit from 8,000 miles away. He can literally sense and feel fighting spirits, and he can also sense a strong opponent while asleep. I'm bringing up all this detail because, as you must have already seen in other videos and posts, Garou vs Yujiro is a battle of martial arts, not strength or speed. So what exactly does that mean? It means that in the Baki verse, Yujiro is the personification of power and speed. Him shaking a skyscraper and using purely his aura is less about scaling the feat in absolute terms, and more about establishing that he exists on a different plane of power altogether. His 100% analytical prediction in Zhao Li, as in body control, means that he can, much like how Garou has done to many of his opponents, turn your own power against you. Now, having set up both human Garou and Yujiro, I'm going to go through 10 key questions about this particular matchup that'll help you see the nuance in their martial arts more clearly. Question 1. Can Yujiro's 100% analysis allow him to land a decisive blow on human Garou before Garou's adaptation can even begin? The short answer is yes. We've seen Garou lose so many times, but you can't say the same about Yujiro. I mean, we know human Garou was completely destroyed by Watchdog Man, and Watchdog Man is not very different from Yujiro in how they both can easily counter Garou's martial arts and land decisive blows before Garou's adaptation kicks in. Question 2. How much damage can Garou afford to take in the early fight for his adaptation to figure out how to fight a complete martial arts anomaly like Yujiro? We know that Bang, thanks to his martial arts mastery, was able to keep up with an almost complete monster Garou, which is several tiers stronger than human Garou, or even half monster Garou. But is it reasonable to assume that Yujiro, who's the pinnacle of martial arts in his own verse, can pull out a similar performance? Absolutely. Of course, not on the same scale as Bang, but his knowledge of martial arts would allow him to catch Garou off guard, just like Bang mocked him with superior martial arts. Question 3. Can Yujiro's Zhao Li neutralize Garou's fist of flowing water? I'd say their redirection techniques might cancel out, but here's the difference to keep in mind. Zhao Li is a static art, while the fist of flowing water is an evolving art. Because of that, we can easily argue that Garou's fist will naturally adapt to the flow of Yujiro's energy itself and find a way to redirect the unredirectable. Question 4. In a pure martial arts duel, who wins the copy battle? Yujiro, who can copy any technique perfectly after seeing it once, or Garou, who adapts and makes those techniques a part of his fighting style mid-fight? This is straightforward. Yujiro sees a technique and replicates it perfectly, while Garou sees a technique, understands its principles, and then adds it onto his fist to further refine and perfect his own martial arts. After all, that's ultimately how he achieved the all-life eradication fist, which granted him the knowledge of all energy flows and the behavior of every force in the universe. Question 5. Is Garou's will strong enough to resist Yujiro's cellular level fear manipulation? The answer is not just yes, it's actually more about how Yujiro's aura would actively fuel Garou's transformation. Plus, we know Garou basically did something very similar to Darkshine. Question 6. How does Yujiro's 100% analysis handle a style that is intentionally designed to have no final form? Yujiro's analysis is based on identifying a fighter's form, weaknesses, and patterns. Problem is, though, that Garou's style is inherently patternless and self-reinventing. It's like that Bruce Lee quote about being formless and shapeless like water.
Be water, my friend.
So the real question is, does Yujiro's analysis give him an initial, overwhelming advantage by pinpointing Garou's human base, or does Garou's constant evolution make an analysis obsolete almost as soon as it's processed? Well, the answer is clear. Simply put, the moment the fight progresses, the 100% accurate data becomes outdated. Yujiro would be constantly fighting a new, slightly evolved version of Garou, which would force him to reanalyze in an endless loop that eventually favors the adapter. Question 7. Can Yujiro's demon face transformation be mimicked by Garou? This is tricky because the demon face is basically a state, or rather technique, in which the user flexes the back muscles to form a face of a demon, and it unlocks a higher tier of power. Now, I'm not sure if Garou can copy it, since it's a genetic trait, and Garou isn't part of the Hanma bloodline. But it's still a good question that shows that while Yujiro's big trump card is bringing out the demon face to jump a tier in strength, Garou's entire evolution is essentially that same concept on steroids. Question 8. Who controls the range of the fight better? Yujiro dominates the inner range, as in the space for decisive finishing blows. Garou controls the outer range so that he has enough room to redirect energy. If we equalize stats and talk purely in terms of martial arts, the winner is whoever successfully forces the fight into their preferred range. Question 9. Does Yujiro's ability to one-shot his opponents become a liability against an opponent who is constantly evolving and adapting? Absolutely. If the first one perfect strike doesn't end the fight, it provides Garou with the ultimate dataset on Yujiro's peak power and killing intent, which would supercharge Garou's adaptation. Finally, question 10. In a battle of attrition, who breaks first? Neither, because they can't be broken. They can only be defeated. But I should add that Garou's character is fundamentally built for attrition. His most iconic battles are long, brutal slogs where he's broken and reborn repeatedly. Alright, with these 10 win conditions broken down, we've seen how their martial arts would actually interact in a fight. Now let's put all that theory into practice. We're going to have Yujiro run the Garou Gauntlet. We'll take Yujiro at his peak and throw him against every single stage of Garou's evolution, one by one, from base human Garou to half monster, perfected fist, and beyond. Now, I know a huge part of the power scaling community will swear on their lives that Yujiro is just threat-level demon fodder in the world of One Punch Man. But I disagree, and I'm going to clarify some of the relevant S-class heroes Yujiro can beat in a one-on-one. You see, there's a critical misconception here. Just because human Garou can beat Tank Top Master, a hero who could throw buildings, that does not mean Garou is physically on that level. In fact, after his fight with Metal Bat, Garou himself said that Tank Top Master and also Metal Bat are meatheads that lack any real hand-to-hand martial arts. I mean, if you look at Garou versus Tank Top Master, you'll see that he simply used the Fist of Flowing Water to redirect Tank Top's attacks back at him. Against a straightforward brawler like Tank Top Master, it's a perfect hard counter. But here's the thing. Just like Garou, Yujiro Hanma is also the antithesis of a musclehead. He can destroy Tank Top Master even more quickly by identifying the holes in his defense with his analysis and then destroying him with hard martial arts. This means Yujiro scales above S-Class hero Tank Top Master. See? This is why I said this whole thing is closer than it looks. It's because power scalers are too fixated on strength and speed and not enough on the actual martial arts skills. When you take away that misplaced focus on strength and speed, the martial skill gap becomes just as relevant as strength or speed. Alright, now let's start with the first one. Yujiro vs base human Garou. It's simple. Yujiro has perfect counters to everything human Garou relies on. He'll use 100% analytical prediction to dissect Garou's entire style before the first exchange is even over. And then, just like how Watchdog Man defeated Garou by using movements that Garou had never seen or could never predict, Yujiro would do the same. He'll win against base human Garou, and that's 100% going to be the case. Anyone capping Yujiro at demon level or talking about Yujiro not even strong enough to beat Tank Top Master is out of his depth. Remember, in the Baki side story titled The Birth of Hanma Yujiro, we see that the day Yujiro Hanma was born was the same day the world leaders secretly decided to arm themselves with nuclear weapons. You won't find statements like these for low-tier S-Class heroes or early story Garou. Next, after the base human Garou, we have red hair Garou. This version of Garou is still mostly human, but his monsterization has begun. What do you think? Who takes this? We know that while Garou defeated all of Death Gatling's team, he needed to adapt and figure them out first. Now compare that to Yujiro. If it was Yujiro instead of Garou, not only would Yujiro not be in such a critical state because his body is naturally less susceptible to damage thanks to Zhao Li, he'll also immediately analyze the weak spots in all 8 of those heroes, and then destroy them worse than what Garou did to them. And I know what you're thinking, what about Bang? How does Yujiro perform against a true martial arts master from One Punch Man? Thing is that unlike human Garou, Bang's fist of flowing water is so perfected that Garou was outdone from every angle. Fair enough, it's a martial art created by Bang. But while we can always make an argument for why two martial artists, regardless of the difference in scale between their verses, may be able to have a fight, we cannot ignore the difference in scale between Baki and One Punch Man forever. So before we conclude Yujiro vs Red Hair Garou, let's talk about that difference. First, I want to bring up the biggest point of misinformation. How Bang could not do anything about the meteor in Season 1, but a not so insignificant number of people online would tell you that Pickle from Baki tanked a meteor, which is stupid and not true. The problem is that this claim implies that Pickle survived the exact meteor impact that wiped out the dinosaurs, as if he took the full force of it head on. However, once you actually look at the scene in context, the entire argument falls apart. For one, Pickle and the dinosaurs that survived are found perfectly preserved in permafrost. If they had been anywhere near the impact site, the heat, shockwave, and overall destructive force would have completely vaporized them, not left them frozen in place. Now, if Bang can't destroy a meteor, and destroying a meteor or even facing it head-on has no basis in Baki, how should we approach Yujiro vs Bang? Let's start with the facts. Yujiro's greatest canonical feats, like stopping a 6-magnitude earthquake with a punch, place him at a conservative high end of large town level and attack potency. When it comes to speed, everyone agrees that he's beyond hypersonic, especially considering that one statement from the narrator about how even if lightning were to strike, Yujiro would be able to respond in time. Bang, however, exists in a narrative where he regularly deals with dragon-level threats. We're talking about entities capable of annihilating multiple cities or even posing a danger to all of humanity. For example, his combat performance while trading blows with awakened Garou places his durability and striking power comfortably at a mountain or even island level. The scaling was not an issue with Tank Top Master because Yujiro had ways to win. But here, both are martial artists, so a stat gap this vast renders the comparison almost moot. In plain English, Yujiro Hanma cannot defeat Bang, the Silver Fang. But then again, Red Hair Garou also got destroyed by Bang, so if neither Yujiro nor early Garou can beat Bang, the real question becomes, how do Yujiro and Red Hair Garou compare to each other? Well, Garou was still rough, so we can reasonably say that Yujiro's Yujiro's insane combat knowledge and analytical skill would give him a real edge. You see, Yujiro fights almost precognitively. He can read an opponent's fighting style, and he's mastered every martial art on Earth. Against a developing Garou, that kind of analytical pressure would definitely catch him off guard, like it did when he fought Watchdog Man. The battle against Death Gatling's team is an example of this. Garou was nearly cornered by a coordinated assault from a group of heroes who weren't even S-class. Yes, he was already severely injured from fighting Watchdog Man and Saitama, but if he were at Yujiro's level in awareness and technique, he wouldn't have ended up in that situation in the first place. Yujiro is the very definition of a single, hyper-lethal, unpredictable opponent. He wouldn't give Garou the time or space to adapt. He immediately capitalizes on every flaw he notices, and Yujiro always notices flaws. Now, after Red Hair, Garou reaches a new ceiling. We're talking about half-monster Garou. And this is where we hit the most controversial turning point in the entire Gauntlet. This is the version of Garou who fought Darkshine and, after breaking through part of his limiter, actually defeated him. And here's a claim that'll surprise you. Yujiro Hanma could also defeat Darkshine. Yes, Darkshine's durability is absurd, and if any One Punch Man character mirrors Yujiro in terms of physical focus the way Bang does, it's Darkshine, the hero considered to be at the pinnacle of physical combat. I mean, even after losing to Garou, he walked out of that fight without a single visible injury. However, Yujiro wins by exploiting the one critical flaw Garou eventually exposed: Darkshine's insecurity. We know that Darkshine's confidence is basically a house of cards. The moment Garou starts adapting, the moment his speed jumps, the moment he lands a real blow, and especially the moment Darkshine sees that defeat is possible, you can see the crack forming. And think about that. It's easy to imagine several scenarios where Yujiro triggers that exact same collapse, even if there's a noticeable gap in their overall power scaling. Keep in mind that Yujiro's demonic aura, which functions almost like a fear-inducing pressure similar to Conqueror's Haki, can target Darkshine's insecurity on a primal level before a single punch is thrown. From there, Yujiro's 100% analytical prediction would let him do deliberately what Garou did instinctively. He would identify the ideal striking points and use precision techniques, like the whip strike, to transmit concussive force through Darkshine's supposedly impervious muscles. He'd also use his superior redirection to turn Darkshine's overwhelming tackles and bazooka punches back onto him. Basically, Yujiro would make it undeniable to Darkshine that his defense means nothing against true martial arts mastery. He'd turn Darkshine's greatest strength, his unbreakable body, into a prison, as Darkshine realizes he can be harmed by the ogre. And to reinforce this idea, just consider basic martial arts logic. Garou demolished Tank Top Master, even though Tank Top Master clearly had higher strength stats. We've literally seen him doing 69,000 squats in one go. Martial skill allows Garou to bridge the physical gap. The same principle applies to Yujiro vs Darkshine, just as it did to Garou vs Darkshine. To emphasize this further, remember that in Baki, Yujiro is established as the single most dangerous being on Earth. He has mastered virtually every martial art known to man, including niche bloodline-locked styles, and he single-handedly wiped out an entire US Army unit in Vietnam using only his fists. And regardless of how you scale the Vietnam feats, the point is to highlight Yujiro's absurd battle IQ and skill diversity. From modern military tactics to brutalizing any beast or animal imaginable, he has experienced every form of combat imaginable. Meanwhile, Darkshine's muscles were there to be used as a literal and psychological armor to protect his feelings. The gap in combat experience and ruthless strategy is genuinely hilarious. And in case you still don't think Yujiro can physically hurt Darkshine, let me add that Yujiro possesses an extremely detailed understanding of human anatomy that goes further than the understanding of skilled surgeons, advanced X-ray tech, or top-level physicians. As long as Darkshine stays a human being, Yujiro is fully capable of exploiting any kind of weak spot anywhere in his body. Also, we know that Garou reached his limit breaker state after Darkshine landed the full force super alloy bazooka that shattered half his ribs. The same attack would hurt Yujiro as well, but with his Xiao Li, he could minimize the damage enough to keep fighting, and more importantly, Yujiro would never let Darkshine land a second hit. Yujiro vs Darkshine is a terrible matchup for Darkshine. Garou was a bad matchup for Darkshine because of his adaptation. Yujiro is an even worse one because he embodies the perfected ideal Darkshine has been chasing his entire life. And what I'm going to say next will surprise you even further. You see, while Yujiro beats Darkshine because it's a bad matchup for Darkshine, he loses to Half Monster Garou, even though Half Monster Garou couldn't beat Darkshine without breaking his limiter. Let's get into why. This is the part where the debate gets genuinely close. Half Monster Garou could resist psychic attacks, generate air-cutting pressure at a distance, regenerate a hole through his abdomen, and create shockwaves that tore Darkshine apart from the inside. So what happens if we swap Darkshine out for Yujiro? It's close. No, seriously, it's closer than it looks. Of course, the element of surprise is gone. Darkshine had no way to understand an opponent who evolved with each exchange. Yujiro, on the other hand, can see Garou's growth with 100% accuracy. Second, Garou wouldn't be the only adaptive fighter. Yujiro is an adaptive force himself. His character is built around constant growth, and nothing fuels that growth more than a real challenge. The moment he feels Garou's air blades or tanks a shockwave, he would lock in harder than ever. All this is why the early portion of Yujiro vs Half Monster Garou is going to be so close. But eventually, Garou breaks his limiter, and this is where the fundamental difference shows up. The narrative function of Garou's power lets him surpass his biology mid-fight. He'd reach a point where Yujiro would be forced to reanalyze him in that endless loop we talked about, which, as I said before, would eventually favor the adapter. In fact, even before breaking the limiter, Half Monster Garou can take the dub once he gets serious. The matchup favors him. He has regeneration, superior stats, and the ability to escalate past Yujiro's peak. Yujiro's techniques and battle IQ can close the gap for a while, but not forever. Soon, Yujiro is outdone both in terms of stats and biology, and while his martial arts is not yet complete, Yujiro has nothing he could do to stop Garou. And hold on, if Yujiro can lose to Half Monster Garou even before Garou starts breaking his limiter, what about the Gauntlet? We've already established that Yujiro beats human Garou for the same reasons Watchdog Man did, and Yujiro beats Darkshine by exploiting the same psychological and technical flaws Garou did, but with more precision. But Yujiro loses to Half Monster Garou because Garou's adaptive evolution eventually outpaces Yujiro's own growth and surpasses it biologically and statistically to the point where Yujiro's battle IQ and martial arts mastery becomes irrelevant. Now what? Do we stop here? Well, we know what happens after this. Garou goes on to achieve his perfected fist form, and at that point, there's no comparison. I mean, against Platinum Sperm, he moved so fast that their movements within a span of 1.3 milliseconds created a massive constellation in the sky. And then he also surpassed and one-shotted that same Platinum Sperm. In his complete monster form, Garou's extreme power attack literally breaks through the Earth's surface and shatters the dimensional barrier. Yeah, there's no way around it. No amount of glazing from the narrator would allow Yujiro to tank a blow that quite literally breaks through the Earth's surface. And then in Garou's cosmic fear mode, Yujiro would just die from radiation poisoning by simply being near Garou, unless the baki narrator takes over. I can easily imagine the baki narrator pulling the most ridiculous BS, like claiming how something as trivial as cosmic radiation could never enter the ogre's skin. And imagine when Garou, having learnt the flow of all energy in the universe, unleashes a gamma ray burst, and the narrator says, "Yujiro Hanma simply opened his mouth, and he ate it." He consumed the most powerful explosion in the universe. No, seriously, Yujiro, when scaled by the baki narrator, is effectively above the entire One Punch Man verse. Now, what do you think? Where is the true turning point? Is it when Garou becomes a half monster? Or is it only when he starts breaking his limiter? Or perhaps even sooner? Come on, let's continue the conversation in the comments below.